Hello and welcome to Jaws of Data, data science for curious people. The next 3 videos I'm going to create a web application that deploys a regression model so that you can then follow this and then create your own one with your own regression model, and then you can put that onto a server and people can use it. In another video I showed you how to do single featured and multi-featured linear regression, and in the single featured regression I'd use this data set. It's a population profit data set that I actually got from Andrew Gee. He's got a publicly available data set that's been cleaned and been scaled correctly, and it basically shows the population size on the x-axis. Here's your feature, here's your x, your variable, and then y would be the output. And so what this model basically helps us to predict is that let's say this company that gathered this data, if they want to go to a city of population size unknown, they can then use this model to predict the profit that they would make there. So I have covered this in another video. It's a well documented data set, very respected. So this is what it looks like here, and then if I will come back to this in another video. But basically, from this I can get the formula for the straight line graph. So I can get the formula, the y is equal to mx plus c formula, and so you've got the intercept and the gradient of this line. And then now that's useful information, right? But how do you make that available for others? Well, here is where building a web application comes. So in this first video, I'm just going to build the HTML. In the second video, I'm going to add the CSS. In the third, I'm going to add the JavaScript. And that will then give us a final web application that will contain this line here, the y is equal to mx plus c line, so that when someone enters into the input field, which we will build, when someone enters in the population size, it will tell them roughly how much profit they will make. Okay, so I have started making my HTML file. You can see here I've started to put in tags. This is to create it so that it is responsive, and then my title will be what was it? I'll just call it population profit web application. So you can then, I will put all this code into my GitHub repository, so you can just copy and paste this if you want. So in an HTML file, there are a number of tags that do certain things, and I'm creating my head section. And then I'm going to want to also, I will add style. This is where I'll just add my CSS in here. I'm not going to create an external style sheet for this one because it's very small and the loading speed will be negligible. However, if it's very big, then it's worthwhile doing that. So my content, this will be my description. So web application predicting web application predicting the profit made by certain population size. That's a terrible description, but I'm just showing you where you would add it. Okay, so now let's start getting into it. So now we're going to create our body. And then at the end of the body, we will have the closing HTML tag. Okay, so let's now create our first div. So in HTML, a div basically it's a container. So think of it like a Lego block. So the class, I'm going to just call that, let's just call it main container. So it's the main container. Let me just quickly save as desktop web app.html. Okay, so there we go. So that's my, so here's now my main div. There's my body there. Okay, great. That's, everything is lining up fine. Okay, perfectly. So now we've got our main container. So this will now be the main sort of Lego block. Then we're going to create another div, and we're going to be giving this an ID because I'm going to be using this, and let's just call it calculator, because we're essentially going to be creating like a little calculator. Well, not a calculator, but we'll be using our regression model. It will function somewhat like a calculator. But really, you can give it any ID name. This ID is going to be used in the JavaScript. This class name is going to be used in the, it's going to be used in the CSS. So the class will be used in the CSS, the ID will be used in the JavaScript. So now let's create our form. So it's going to be a simple input form. Let's now okay, now button. Okay, so we're going to create, no wait, first before we have our button, we're going to have our input, and then the ID, let's make the ID X. So this will be X, and then type is equal to text. So it's going to be an input, and it's going to be our X. So just to make it easier for us to understand, this is going to be our X, so our X and our Y. So that's why I'm just calling it X. So this will be, this ID is going to be used in the JavaScript, and it's going to be, it's the name of our X input into this machine learning model. So text and then placeholder will be equal to, and we will have population size, and then so that's going to be the placeholder, yeah. Okay, okay, so then we got our form. Then after that we're going to have button, and it's going to be type button class calculate button. So, or let's call it calculate btn. Calculate btn ID will be equal to calculate, and it's going to say calculate. So let me just save that, and then let me now, okay, so that's what it looks like there. So population size, and there's our calculate button. You can see it looks terrible. Don't worry, we're going to add CSS, and it's going to look really cool in the end. So here we got our form. So this is our form, and the input, so is our form, and then our input, and then where am I? Here we go, our form and our input, and then we've got our button is over here, and it says calculate. Okay. Okay, we want to have a second button, and this is going to be the reload button. So button, but this one is, we are not going to be using JavaScript for this one, so we're not going to put an ID. We're just going to use a class reload button. That'll be for the CSS. And then what I'm going to do is on click, I'm going to window.location.href, and then you'll be able to put a URL there. Alright, so what this little function is doing here is that it's going to, when this button gets clicked, it's going to go to this URL. So when you deploy it, you can then make that page, this you can put in the URL here, and then when it reloads, it reloads there. So it's window.location.href. So if we save that and we come back to our web application, here we got reload. And there you can see it's going to the URL. Just as a test, what we could do, we could pick any old website. Oh, let's not go to Google, let's go to Formula One. Let's just go to the Formula One website quick. I like Formula One. And then if I put a URL into there and I save it, then I reload here. When I click this, it's not going to go to Formula One. So you click reload, it'll go there. So what we will be able to do, that'll be a quick and easy way of us creating a reload on the actual live website. Okay, so that's the button now done. I'm now going to have a little like HR, which is a tag that's used just to create like a line and some little space, so that'll be an HR. Now I'm going to add another container, and this container is basically going to be when we will input a particular population size into here, we click calculate, and that answer needs to appear. So this little container, this little Lego block of our HTML file is where it will appear. So we go to class, so the class, this will be for the styling of this. I'll just call it result div, and then ID is equal to result div, the original. And then we've got span, so we're going to create a span is another HTML tag that just creates one little Lego block within a line. So that's just what that is. So it's just another container. So answer heading ID equals result heading, and then we got answer. Okay, so what this has basically done is, and then let's add this guy here. So now we've created another container, and we've got one span which says answer, and then we created another space. So let's save that. And what this basically looks like is that. So we will input, a population size of it'll be in millions, so 5, and then it'll calculate that. So we will get back to more of those details in the next videos. So that's the first span class, and the second one, so that's the heading. And the reason why I'm doing this is because we're actually going to make it disappear when you load it, and only when you click calculate will it appear. So that's why I'm putting them in span. So answer span, and then ID equals result. So this will now be our final result, 0.00. And then we got a div, and then we got a div, and then we got a div. Okay, that's our HTML done. So let's just go over that. So we've got doc type, we've got the HTML, we've got a head, and we've got this which makes it basically, see if I right click, if I then right click and inspect, you'll see here it's basically adjusting it to the size of the screen, so that when someone views your web application on different platforms, it'll be the same size. So that's what it's doing there. Okay, so that is viewport, and then that is content initial scale 1. Okay, then we've got the title, then we've got the message name, then we've got this first container, which is the main container. Then we've got the next div, which is this div will be used for the JavaScript. There will be no CSS added into this one. Then we've got a form. We've got an ID of X, and we've got a type. We've got a placeholder, and then we've got form, and then we've got the button. We've got type the button. Let's just reduce that extra space. So we've got type button, class, calculate button. So this will, our styling will be using this class, calculate button. And then we've got the ID, calculate, and then that's the text we're seeing. Then we got the class reload button, and then it's reloading. And then here, this last container will basically be showing us the result. So I just call it the result div, and the ID is the result div. And then the class is over here. Yep, cool. Answer heading, so that is the answer heading. This is the CSS will use this class, and then the JavaScript will use this ID to basically hide it, and then only show it at the end. Result heading, and then into here is where the JavaScript will input the final result. So we've got class, answer span, ID, result, and we're done. So this is what our final web application looks like. So far, it looks terrible, but you'll see it evolve, and it'll look much better in the next video when we add the CSS. Thank you so much for watching this video, and please feel free to use the code, and I look forward to building this web application that deploys a regression model. Have a fantastic day. Bye for now.